Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Matt, I suppose the only news to start is the 6 Scottish players who broke the team protocols last weekend and headed out in Edinburgh. Apparently that is the case. 2 of those players involved Captain Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell. What do you all make of it, Matt?
It's very hard to fathom, Stu, isn't it? I saw that online and you're just exasperated, really, I think is the term I'd use. How can the leaders of the team, 3 Lions, and the captain, senior players, break protocol, a simple protocol? Once we come back to the hotel, for a whole lot of reasons, COVID, alcohol, a whole lot of reasons, don't go out. And they just ignore what's best for the team because they're playing a test match representing their country 6 days later, so it's a Sunday game, and go out drinking. I mean, even in the amateur days, people would have said, come on now, if we said we're not going out, we're not going out. We do it as a team. But look, it's something Shane Horgan has pointed out on TV a number of times, is the culture that leadership in a team provides has a direct impact on the field. And if you look at Hogg and Russell, they've made big mistakes in big games this year, and have lacked, especially Finn Russell has lacked energy and in defence and determination. Yet you've got people like Rory Darg busting his backside in his first game to defend and to sprint back and to make hard tackles. And I can only just feel for Gregor Townsend and the Scottish rugby supporters who must just be saying, well, what is it these guys don't get? Like, what is it you don't get about that? And I find, and look, what this Scottish team is in danger of, and I've come out and said they're the most talented group Scotland have had since professionalism started. But that's all going to be wasted because of their inconsistency. And you're seeing then adding things like this. There's no wonder they're inconsistent if that's their mindset. Like I was upset when I heard it, but I was in disbelief. I said, surely, like at this time of the season, at this where we are in the game and where Scotland are poised, and their captain and their leading players. I mean, it's really sad. I really feel for Gregor Townsend because that reflects on the team, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't reflect on Gregor at all. But that's just the way the world looks. And so, well, look, this is the second time this has happened with guys with alcohol. Like, what's going on? What's Gregor doing? They're men. They're men. They're grown men. They're not children to say, you naughty little boys. These are grown men, senior professionals that have let their country and their coach just swinging out there in the wind. I'm really, really, really staggered.
Alan, do you echo exactly what Matt says? What do you make of it all?
Yeah, it's very, very strange, and so I'm like, it's hard to believe that this has happened. Maybe it's not a big thing with all the players because out of the group that went out, they all seem to be involved, bar Finn Russell. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
So
Tupelutu's not out. Tupelutu's
he's gone off the bench, is he?
Yeah.
So what we're hearing, and that there has been a statement from the Scottish Rugby Union that some of the players came home and maybe some didn't. But I think it's, look, without dwelling too much on it, it's shocking to say the least. When you're part of a group, you have a privilege of playing for your country, representing your club, your family, your people, and your country, most important, and having respect for the people around you. I like, this is something that you would associate with an under-18 team or maybe an under-20 team, a club side.
Yeah. Like
these are adults, they're experienced guys, they've been around a long time. The situation, if they go out, they get COVID, they bring it back into the camp, they could jeopardize everyone's possibility of playing against Ireland this week. So, like, what planet are they on? There's something serious. They all should have been dropped, in my opinion. The whole lot should have been gone. He should have made a statement. They're not going to win in Dublin anyway, I don't think. Should have made a statement, should have dropped the whole lot of them. And that's where the only failing in all this is that he hasn't dropped all 6 of them out of the 23. And that, like, it's shocking stuff. And look, people make mistakes. People will stay out past, curfews and times. And I've been in teams over the years. But COVID makes it's a different situation with COVID. And all these players and squads would have sat down before the tournament, agreed the protocols that they were going to adhere to, but trying to stay in the bubble as much as they can. It's difficult for some who have to go back to France and stuff like that, but to try and do the right thing, to actually go back to Edinburgh and to do it back at base, basically, it's mind-boggling. But look, Gregor, I'm sure will be quizzed in this a bit more post-game, but it's a pity. It's a shame it's happened, and I'm not sure how it'll affect them. I think they'll still be fired up. They'll still be very dangerous, and they'll still want to try and get a result. Sometimes things like this galvanise a team, brings them closer together. But it's a pity because it's only really kind of, I've only heard it a very short while ago, and I don't want to be too hard on guys, but they're not kids. You said it, Matt. They're not kids, and they should know better. And it just goes against anything that you're trying to build in a team, any sort of respect and unity. And I don't know why. Have a few beers in the hotel and just understand the world is different at the moment with COVID. You bring COVID in, as I said, jeopardizes the game.
Yeah. Matt, if we take one last one on Finn Russell, obviously he's had his issues with Gregor in the past. This is now another issue. Where does he, with Scotland, go from here? I know he's on the bench tomorrow, but even going forward, would you still have him involved because he's so good, Matt, or do you not see it like that?
I don't know the psychology of Finn. There is zero doubt of his talent and his ability.
He's a good bloke as well, Matt. He's popular with players. He's a decent fella, very mannerly, a nice fella. Yeah. Probably a little bit childish, maybe young, free spirit. But he is a good bloke, to be fair. Yeah. So we don't want to completely kick a fella when he's down. But he's had issues with Gregor, and this cropped up. Was it last year, the year before, when he came back in the Sunday night and he went out for a few beers as well? And it's only himself he's hurting, really.
It is, Albert. And look, his form, and as I say, this guy's a really good player. And Scotland, and I know from first-hand experience, the big issue for Gregor is the depth of talent, of playing talent within Scotland. And very rarely do you have these world-class 10s that obviously Finn is. So you've got a world-class 10, a world-class 15, number 8, 9, like the spine of that team for the first time in 20 years in every position, including hooker, if you put hooker in the spine of that team, is really strong. But Finn has not played well since the England game. He's been poor, and I don't know why. Now, I don't know this for a fact. He doesn't look to be in prime condition. He looks to be a little bit lax with sometimes the French players that go to France get into that habit because you can't train as hard because you're playing every week, every Saturday. So you've got to rest to get ready to play, and your conditioning drops off. I would suspect that's happened with Finn, and his form has not been anything like we know what it can be. He's dropped some simple balls. He got himself yellow carded. He did a terrible kick up the field against DuPont, where DuPont counterattacked and they scored, and he didn't chase back with enough energy and effort to fix up his mistake. He let other people do it, and they didn't or couldn't do it. They scored a try. Now, there was Shane Horgan said something to me, which I agree, that really that attitude from a leader, you can't have it in the team, and there has to be something done to address it, because you compare that, again, as I said before, to Rory Darg, who has just been sensational since he's given his chance. He's 2 run-ons, and he's been brilliant, but he's been the exact opposite. So it doesn't take talent to do those things, but it does take effort, and it does take a commitment. And I'm not suggesting that Finn is not committed to Scotland, but somewhere along those combinations of things, he just hasn't got it together at this year's Six Nations. And he might be trying his guts out, it's just not working for him. But it doesn't appear that way when you're just observing it from the sidelines.
Alan, if we move on to the game and we look at Ireland, Jack Conan comes in, and so does Mac Hansen. What do you make of the team? And I think you said it earlier, Ireland will be too strong, you think. But are they the changes you would have made, or you expected Andy Farrell to make?
I partly guessed he'd tweak it a little bit. Jack Conan played really well when he came on last week, and Matt and I both had a good chat about Peter O'Mahony and what he brings, and the reason probably he was picked for the English game last week. He's terrorised their line out. He's been brilliant at the breakdown. This week is a different game. It's kind of horses for courses, and Ireland want to attack and they want to probably finish on a real high. And I'm sure, one of Jack's biggest strengths is he's ball in hand. He loves getting the ball in hand. He can evade players. He's a great carrier. A little bit different to Peter. They have different strengths. So I think obviously that impact last week, he showed a reaction. He showed an enthusiasm when he came on and scored a great try. He runs those lines brilliantly, doesn't he? So that one wasn't a big surprise. I think O'Mahony coming off the bench, and the bench will be crucial this week again if they want to build tempo and try and keep control of the game. And that bit of experience will certainly be important. But he's back Bundyaki again. How do you separate these guys? We've spoken about it, haven't we, Matt? Bundyaki, Robbie Henshaw, and maybe that's what Andy Farrell. Sometimes when you come on and you make a brilliant impact off the bench, a coach can take, you could do that again next week. So Robbie showed that hunger as well coming on, and he was brilliant in some of his decision making. And to be fair to Bundyaki, I thought he was outstanding against Wales. He was good in Paris. He's played really well for Ireland. He looks in good shape. He looks hungry as well. So it's hard to split those guys. They have played together in the centre a number of times for Ireland, but Ringrose gives you that. He's really pivotal now in this wide game that Ireland are playing. No real surprises. I think Mac Hansen coming in for Andrew Conway is a no-brainer. I think Hansen actually can offer something different again from that footballing point of view, and being a receiver if he comes in field and bringing other guys into the game. So I think Ian Henderson, there's no debate. He was obviously going to come in and start. He needs a big game this week. He's a wonderful player, Ian Henderson. Probably would be frustrated himself with the 2 penalties probably last week. I'm probably no one to talk about penalties because two was a small number to me, Matt. You know that.
That's it. Glass houses, Quinny. Glass houses, mate.
But he just he needs a big game, and he's a great player. And I think it's hard. Hendy hasn't played a lot of rugby this year. No. He's a brilliant player, and I think he'll be better even for that experience last week. So no real surprises. I think the scrum is obviously the big issue, that we now know that the referees' feedback and from referee manager back to the Ireland camp was that some of the decisions were wrong.
Yeah.
I knew that last week when I looked at him. Unless I was totally crazy, it was probably a 50-50 situation. Yeah. Some of them should have been reset, maybe not even penalties for either side. But this narrative that Ireland's scrum is completely in tatters at the moment is not the case. England did have that little bit of pressure on them. And it's something they need to learn going forward, that if people are wheeling and stepping across and moving that point of contact and that pressure point, you've got to go with the flow and counteract it in some way. Create a different picture, because there's no point in, if Ireland are in a World Cup quarter final in 18 months, I don't want to be jumping too far ahead. You're out if that situation happens. You give away 6 scrum penalties. So in one sense, win with a bonus point last week and have those issues and try and fix them will be really important for the team. But the key for me, Stuart, this week is mentally. Can they find that drive? Can they get up to 5th gear, 4th, 5th gear as quickly as possible and really have a real tempo and energy to their game? And because there's going to be a bit of a bite out of this Scottish team. Everybody's writing them off. They were poor in Italy last week. got some good tries, but in the end, you're winning by 12, 13 points against the Italian team in Rome. You're not going to be bouncing out of the place thinking that was brilliant. So they obviously lost to Wales, got trounced by France in that second half. So are we good enough to beat them? Absolutely, and we should expect to beat them. But there's going to be a bit of a bite out of the Scottish team tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, Matt, there will be a bit of bite out of the Scottish team, but the talking point is Blair Kinghorn at 10 instead of Finn Russell. Kinghorn, he hasn't played much rugby at all at 10. What do you make of him? And Matt, it is a big, big day for him. Is he up to the task?
You've got to feel sorry a bit for the young man. It's obviously a huge day for him, as you say, Stu. But, wow, he's been handled a very big mission, hasn't he, by Gregor? I mean, Gregor, we're assuming, I'm going to say we're assuming he has something to do with discipline. I agree with Quinny that perhaps the best thing to do is to drop a lot of them. But there is this dilemma the coach has: do I punish the team? So he's made a big call at 10. And that's going to be very, very hard to do in the international stage with not a lot of rugby in that position under your belt. It's going to be difficult. I look across that side, and really, and I'm not taking away from the issues at our half, but where this game and every test match is going to be won is 1-8, and especially for the Scots in D. What the Irish, if you watched Ireland open against England in those first few minutes leading up to James Lowe's try, the movement of the ball between forwards and backs and the number of passes and the pace and tempo of the game, there was just a wow to it. It was like, woof, look at that. They are really coming out. And what that tempo does, it asks questions of the forwards in D. They're not only saying, do I have to make a tackle? It's choosing who to make a tackle. And a bit of that was the issue with the red card, because obviously England had been told, no dummies off the front man, and someone's got to get around to get hold of Sexton, which was what they tried to do but got it wrong. Very, very wrong. Now, I'm just not sure that Scottish pack, especially the Scottish tight five, can deal with the pace that Ireland put on a game for a long period of time. Now, I'm not saying they're weak. I'm not saying, and obviously having Johnny Gray coming back, I think is a huge plus for them. But that's going to be where it's won or lost. And a bit like Joey Carberry against France, everyone was judging Joey against France, saying, well, look, if your pack lays down the foundation, 9 and 10's job is really easy. But if your pack's not laying down a foundation, it makes the 9 and 10's jobs hard. So I think so much of what is going to happen with Kinghorn is about what his pack does, as it is for every 10 in the game. And that's my issue. I think that Irish pack will dominate. And I agree with Quinny. I actually thought the English scrummaging performance was a virtuoso coaching and player performance. Now, much of it was illegal. There's no doubt about that it was illegal. But it was brilliantly illegal. Like the coordination, the old school, see the tight head angling in onto the Irish hooker, the tight head flanker breaking off and pushing, literally just pushing Cian Healy across, and the other 6 forwards stepping to the left, like in the old days when we played in the 80s, a step and wheel. I mean, it was brilliantly illegal. And I'm saying that, like I watch the tapes and I'm going, that takes a lot of practice to get that right and a lot of cohesiveness. The Scots haven't got that, I don't believe. But they're very good scrums taken square. Their scrum hasn't gone backwards. But it's their defence in the midfield where France found a lot of holes at Murrayfield that I think will make life very, very difficult for him and make Kinghorn's job, that's going to be a tough day for the young man. I hope he goes well.
Yeah, Alan, how do you protect Blair Kinghorn? Will Hamish Watson, Roy Darge and Ferguson want to protect him, or will they just be concentrating themselves to make sure they're good up front and win turnovers and let the rest take care of itself, and hopefully Kinghorn will have a good day for their sake?
I don't think he needs much protecting. He's a big physical guy. He's 6'4" or 5", very big fly half, and quite strong and athletic. So I don't think he needs physical protecting. I think he needs good quality ball. Ali Price needs to deliver to him, and the Scottish forward. So that's going to be the key for them, getting their breakdown right, accuracy there, and giving him some time and space, because he's a running fly half as well, and he's a real threat with the ball in his hand. He obviously had a brilliant game against Connacht a few weeks ago in the URC, but that's different level. This is there's going to be a different pace and tempo to this game at international level. But he's a good player. He's a threat and he's dangerous. So if he goes well, he could cause Ireland some problems. So they've got to be very, very mindful of that defensively. And the best way, you asked the question, how Scotland protecting, keep the ball for long periods. The more touches you get as a player who's coming in that hasn't played there in a while, your confidence grows and you can get into the game. So Ireland will have to try and make it difficult and put pressure on him and get at him, get Bundyaki running down that channel, try and get him on the ground and ask those kind of questions. But that's the intrigue of the game. Who holds onto the ball? Ireland are a very good possession-based team. They really need to tidy up the turnover situation this week, because they forced a few passes last week. And Scotland are a team who'd love a bit of chaos. The game to kind of go all frantic and everyone to be throwing the ball around. They'll enjoy that as well. I think Ireland probably need to be quite structured for a period of this game, particularly early on. Ask questions up front with their own scrum, maul, one-out runners, that they really make Scotland feel the physical side of the game, and Ireland win the collisions. But they have some powerful players. Schumann, great carrier for them. If he gets in the front foot, and an exceptional back row. I think Fagerson, Darge and Watson can cause all sorts of problems. So Ireland have had breakdown issues. They had them against Italy a couple of weeks ago. They had a couple last week, and they've got to improve their accuracy there and limit the turnovers. And I think it will set the tone for the game, particularly early on.
A final one on this, Matt. I have to go back to 2010. Good old Dan Parks was the hero that day, the last time Scotland won in Dublin. I know you're a fan of Dan Parks, but is there any chance for Scotland tomorrow?
Danny's a good guy. Still keep in touch with him. He's a lovely fellow back in Australia now. Look, Scotland don't fear Ireland, and when they've come close at the Aviva a few times. Let's remember when Stuart Hogg, dropped the ball over the try line there. If he had to put that ball down, Ireland were in a bit of trouble that day. So they'll come to the Aviva with no fear. I'm not doubting that. But Ireland are playing in a very different manner than they were the last time the two teams met. Ireland are playing wonderful rugby. And there's a lot of people slagging Ireland during the week. I just don't get that. They started brilliantly. They got some tough decisions against them. And England, what does everyone think England's going to do? Lay down? England are a proud country, and they fought like champions. You don't get Maro Itoje and these guys to lay down. They'll never lay down. And they fought and fought. And they would have cracked a lot of other teams the way they fought. It was a limited game plan from England, but Ireland weathered the storm, regrouped, and scored tries late in the game. Doesn't matter whether you scored them in the first minute or the 79th minute, they're all worth the same amount of points. And Ireland, Jack's try was after, I think it was a minute 50 of possession. As Quinny said, they're excellent at holding the ball. But at home, at the Aviva, and Ireland will have grown their momentum from that win. That was a big day for Ireland. They needed to win that game. They'll come to the Aviva, very happy place, the Aviva. They haven't lost there in a long, long time. And they'll want to go into New Zealand, which is coming up in the summer, with some more momentum. And I think the pace that they'll play will be very hard to Scotland to live with. Right now, we don't know what's happening internally in Scotland. As Alan said, they're either pulls them together, or some of the guys look back at the leaders and go, "You've got to be kidding me." So we don't know which it's going to be. Either way, I think Scotland will come out without fear. But I think the pace and tempo and accuracy of the Irish passing and running game eventually will wear Scotland down, and they won't be able to live for the full 80 minutes with that. I think that will give Ireland a win.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating match. If we move on to Saturday evening, big one for France. Alan, going for the Grand Slam against England. It's going to be a cracking match, isn't it? You know, France playing all the rugby and it's really set up for them.
It'll be a cracking match if England turn up and make a match out of it, like we all want them to do. I think it's a really tough challenge. All the momentum is with the French side at the moment. They have a huge amount of consistency in selection right throughout the tournament. Very, very little change. We've seen a couple of changes because of COVID in the last game, but by and large, this team is very, very settled, very confident, and incredibly powerful and abrasive. And you know, Paris is going to be rocking on Saturday night, isn't it? They really believe it's 2010 since they last won a Grand Slam, and that would, you know, that's much too long for this French side. I think, you know, there is a great feeling. Matt will know this from living over in France. There's an enthusiasm and an optimism and a real excitement about this team, that they can actually win something. And it's all on the line tomorrow night for them. Have they been brilliant throughout the championship all the time? No. They kick the leather off the ball. They're very direct and pragmatic. They have incredible power and physicality. They kick the most in the competition. And then they have brilliant individual X-factor players who can just do something special. And when they get into the right areas, that's when they can punish you and score tries and really ramp up the pressure. But I thought they were really, really poor in Cardiff last week, and it nearly cost them. A better side, and if Wales, Jonathan Davies catches a pass there in the second half, it could be try-time Wales, and their Grand Slam was nearly gone. I don't think they'll get complacent against England because the rivalry there, and they love nothing more. If they were to choose any team in the Six Nations to win a Grand Slam at home with, it would be England. So from our point of view, I think, yeah, we'd love if England turn up. England are a physical side. Underhill back in the team. Sikwe is in there again. Brilliant line out forward. They have plenty of power and grunt. I think Sinclair is a loss for England. But can they match that physicality and pressure? And again, I think England's problem is in the back line, not up front.
Matt, George Furbank comes in at fullback for England. It's a massive test for him. But just touching on the physicality, which Alan mentioned, do you think England can compete with that and, you know, maybe do a number in France?
I think they can compete. It's a very good pack. I agree with Quinny. Sinclair's not starting is huge issue for England. Ben Young's coming back in, but it's outside Ben Young's Marcus Smith. Like France have got them beaten left, right, and centre. Look,
what's Ben Young's going to do, Matt? He's going to kick. They should have left Harry Randall in there and just gone for broke here and attacked France.
Well, Quinny, I'm with you. I think what that tells us is the limited game plan they played so well against Ireland, and we've got to give them a lot of leeway on the game plan they played because they only had 14 men. They had to play in a certain manner, and it was very effective for a long period of that game. And they're saying we're going to kick the leather off the ball, we're going to maul, we're going to scrum, we're going to contest your line out, and then we're going to kick the leather off the ball and make you play and put pressure back on France. Now, there's a couple of points to that. I think France had some illness in the camp. That's come out. They had flu and things in the camp. But, mate, they were scared. The first time I've ever seen France under Galtier play scared because they knew Cardiff was the banana skin. Their young minds were already in Paris, and they were loving Paris. The French Rugby Union have been advertising La Crunch, as they call this game, England versus France. They've been advertising it since week 1 in France. Because they bet was this is going to come to this game. It's going to be 85,000 people punching out national anthems, Allez le bleu, and with the tricolour waving. Presidents turning up. It's just going to be the biggest show on earth. And I think they're going to do it. England are going to try and play 101 rugby and tackle and snuff them out of the game. But I just don't – if they can't do it at Twickenham against Ireland, I don't think they'll be able to do it at Stade de France against France, just because there's so many great individuals there that when there's nothing, they just create something. And especially against that back line. If you can go to their full back line there, if it was Tuilagi and Johnny May, Watson and Farrell across their three-quarter line, okay, that's a different story, but they haven't. And I think France will, unfortunately for Ireland, will be too strong. If that is the case, it's still not a train smash for Ireland. That if Ireland comes second and win against Scotland, that's been a very credible Irish performance. I'll say something here, so I get annoyed that don't want to annoy the Irish fans. I'd love to see Ireland win, but if I come in my helicopter a bit as an older rugby guy, not just completely immersed in one team, it's good for the game if France can do something as well, because we need a strong France for a strong Six Nations. Having them the way they have been the last 10 years hasn't been good for the championship. Have them back playing really good rugby and positive rugby and successful rugby is good for everyone, financially, interest-wise and competition-wise. Here's the last bit. If it finishes France and Ireland on top, let's just say 1 and 2 or equal first, or Ireland first, France second, two teams who have committed to running the ball, two teams who play high-tempo attacking rugby is being successful and defeating rush defence. That is brilliant for our game because both teams play beautiful rugby at the moment. And long may it remain so. And long may teams that play that style have success, because that encourages the juniors, the clubs, everyone to emulate that style of game. And when our game is played like that, man, it's beautiful. It's great to watch. When our game is played like England is playing it at the moment, and I understand why England are doing that. I'm not ripping into them for it. They're doing it for a reason. But it's not good to watch. It's brave and it's courageous. But it's like watching paint dry, isn't it? It's horrid.
Quinny, just picking up there on what Matt said, like watching paint dry for England and Ireland and France. They're playing the good rugby to watch. Coming into this tournament, Eddie Jones was saying, geez, England will be great to watch and they'll be attacking. But as the tournament's gone on, they really haven't. Sure, they haven't.
No, they don't have the players. I think, he's kind of pulled the rabbit out of the hat with George Furbank this week at full back and moved Stuart to the wing. I just don't see. You just don't see that world-class, aggressive, X-factor, incredibly skillful player in that English backline who are causing problems, and we've seen them cause very few problems for teams throughout the Six Nations. Okay, yes, some of them are young. He wants the old England mirrored together with the new England, and I'm not really sure what that means. But I was surprised that English pundits, players, fans last week applauding a bonus point loss to Ireland in Twickenham. Yeah. Even with 14 men. Ireland won the first test in 2016 in South Africa with 14 men for most of the game. It's, dare I say it, Matt Williams' Leinster beat Munster in 2002 in a Celtic League final with 14 men. It happens in games. Just because you're down to 14 doesn't mean that you're automatically going to lose the game or going to win the game or lose the game, whatever. Lose the game, I should say. So I don't know where England are at the moment. I think they're a bit all over the place. Clive Woodward is coming out saying, and he's probably been jabbing Eddie for a while, and Eddie's jabbing him back a little bit. I think Eddie Jones's job on the line, his job is on the line here. I think if France were to humiliate England in Paris, I think he's a serious task in his hand to keep his job, because we're not really sure what England are doing at the moment, the way they're playing. Of course they showed a load of fight. These guys are top-class professionals. Of course they should show fight. They're playing at home. But I just, I understand it as a player, and I heard Jamie George saying it. He was very proud of the effort, of course. And to be fair, maybe it's a mark of respect to where Ireland are at the moment, that they do respect Ireland. Ireland are the best attacking team in the tournament. So maybe it's a mark of respect. But I'm just surprised, England are a powerhouse. They always have been. They've always more players. They should beat Ireland 9 times out of 10. We bucked the trend in the professional area, and we've turned that around, and we've been unbelievably competitive. But the previous games we were humiliated over in Twickenham. So it was strange. I'm not sure what they're doing or where they're going at the moment. If Eddie Jones gets through tomorrow night and they somehow manage to put out a result or even a good performance, I think he'll be okay. And you wouldn't want to face England in the World Cup, because England in 6 months could be the best team in the world. They can just pull players, produce players. They have a lot of talent to choose from. So who knows? But at the moment, they just look a little bit disjointed and not really sure what type of game they're playing. And they kick the ball away a lot. We covered the first game in Scotland. They were very fortunate to get out of there. Unfortunate that they didn't win it. But when they look back at that game, they had enough possession to win that game against Scotland. So negative rugby, you get punished, you get caught. And I'm not really sure what they're at the moment.
Matt, just wrapping up the England chat, if his job is on the line, as Quinny says, or close to being, he's the sort of guy to get them over the line and beat France.
I think I'm just saying that's coming out in the English media. I'm not necessarily saying it and judging him saying that he should be sacked, because, obviously the mood is different in the country. And I think you read articles, you see the stuff online, and that's the pressure. So I'm not saying sack Eddie Jones for any of the listeners, but I think he is. I feel he's under a bit of pressure, Matt. Is he?
I don't think there's any doubt he's under pressure, Alan. And that's the environment in English sport. And that there's a lot of leakage from the attitude in football, where a manager has a bad month, he gets punted. And that leaks into other sports. So the English cricket team comes to Australia, they don't play well in Australian conditions, which are really hard. They want to sack the coach. Eddie Jones, gets to the World Cup final, then he loses these number of players. And again, if I said on a pod a couple of times here, two Six Nations out from a World Cup, or 18 months before a World Cup, Eddie Jones bloods a lot of players, plays mind games with his team, drops guys, moves them around. He likes to unsettle everyone. That's the way the guy does business. But come World Cup time, he has not got it wrong once. You don't make 3 finals as a coach and winning one as an assistant coach without, knowing your way around the cycle leading up to a World Cup. So I don't think I think there's pressure definitely there in the community, rugby community. I think he'll be pretty good within the RFU themselves, unless something goes terribly awry on Saturday. But let me tell you, it could
potentially, Matt. They could finish 5th again for the second year in a row, and that's the big question. England need Scotland to get nothing in Dublin. That's what they need. If they lose in Paris, they need to get a losing bonus point, because Scotland and England are on 10 points.
Yep.
Wales are on 6. They're going to get a bonus point. They're going to go to 11. Yep. Scotland need to get a point at least to not finish 4th or 5th. And I think it's fair to say, and I've met Eddie Jones a few times, and there's you probably know him way better, Matt. He's always been polite, pleasant. I think he's pretty ruthless in his rugby when the rugby head is on. But he's always been pretty polite to me and pretty nice. So I can't say, I don't want to get personal and say he's something he's not. I don't know. But he's pretty ruthless. And there is a bit of pressure there. And I just think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think England potentially finishing 5th in this tournament for the second year in a row is probably not good enough for England.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, Alan. I agree with that. Eddie is a winner. He's not a rude person. When you meet him, Eddie's never rude to you, and he's decent, very polite person. But you don't survive as a head coach in international teams for almost 25 years and in multiple club teams without being ruthless about your rugby, and he is. But I also think he's convinced the RFU about a long-term plan for the World Cup, and I agree with that. I totally agree with that, and I think that's where a lot of countries have failed in their planning for World Cups is not being prepared to embrace a multi-year plan to get there. Because when something goes wrong in that multi-year plan, they panic and sack and change, so they never actually get to the end of that cycle. Australia's been guilty of that since about 2003 on a number of occasions, as has France, as have England. Now, I think because Eddie was successful at the last World Cup, or relatively made a final, he's got some form of agreement there. But you're dead right. Finishing fifth 2 years in a row is well below the acceptable standards of what England should be doing and should expect.
Well, it's going to be interesting. We must move on quickly to the last game of the weekend. Wales v Italy. Alan, big days for Dan Biggar. It's his 100th cap for Wales, and then Alan Wynne-Jones comes back in, 150th. He's some man, isn't he?
Incredible. I played against Alan Wynne and know him well. It's just phenomenal. His longevity, his tenacity, and his pride for his country. You know, he epitomizes what sacrifice and commitment and desire is all about. We spoke about a group of Scottish players at the start that not setting a good standard for their team. This guy set a standard as a leader, as a passionate rugby player for Wales, and the whole of Wales should be very, very, very proud of the way this guy puts his body and his line for his country. And I played against him a number of times. I don't know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does it mean he's around for ages or I'm gone for ages? I'm not sure. But I played against Alan Wynne. Should have been on a Lions tour in 2009 with him. Didn't go, but he's a great fella, great player, and he's of that Martin Johnson, Paul O'Connell type character in rugby, that gritty leader, captain, high achiever, someone who just turns up, puts on the jersey, does his job incredibly well, and loves doing it, and has an incredible standard. So Alan Wynne, everybody in rugby should salute Alan Wynne-Jones and tip the hat to him, because it's phenomenal. 150 tests tomorrow. What an achievement. And I don't know if anyone will surpass that, will they, Matt? It's 150 caps, international caps is incredible. And Dan Biggar as well, 100 caps. Great achievement for him. Johnny Sexton, of course, was at 105 tomorrow. He's equaling John Hayes' record, the sixth most capped Irish player. So it's phenomenal. Had 27 caps for Ireland, had a few injuries and probably a few frustrations of non-selection at times. And a lot of the guys around me, particularly in that old Munster team, would have got up 70, 80, 100 caps. Phenomenal. And for any player, for any country to play 100 tests is a remarkable achievement. And again, Dan Biggar is the same. You know, he's just such a winner. And I love to see people in any sport play with that pride, that passion, that desire. And you don't get this far without all that stuff. So I think it's obviously Wales would love to be finishing, maybe trying to win a championship or a Grand Slam, I think, in the Principality tomorrow. But still a very special day for those two boys.
Yeah, as you say, Alan, both incredible achievements for those two players. Matt, I will ask you one last time in this Six Nations Championship. Do you give Italy any chance tomorrow?
No, I don't. Unfortunately. The thing, they did some... There was progress for Italy last week. There's no doubt about that. Scotland scored long-range tries, quite good long-range tries as well. And Italy did a lot of good things, especially in the first 20 minutes. But they just couldn't rack the points up. So they're putting pressure on, but they couldn't convert that pressure to scoreboard pressure. They've got some really brave players there. Lamaro, their captain. We talked about Alan Wynne-Jones and Dan Biggar. The leadership that they provide for Wales. Biggar was magnificent last week, and his example is Alan Wynne-Jones. Just as across Ireland we have Brian O'Driscoll, then Paul O'Connell. People that you just wanted to play for those guys, and you would not let them down. You would not let them down. When you have a captain like that, you won't let them down. Now, Lamaro is turning into that sort of captain. He's a young guy. He's only in his early 20s, 23, I think he is. He's turning into that. And I can see this Italian side moulding and moving forward in time, but they're not ready yet. We need to be patient with them. I think I have seen progress this year. Unfortunately, it hasn't progressed into wins or tries. They just don't seem to have anyone with a cutting edge in that back line that can really just bang, I'm going to score a try and rip a team apart that they had perhaps in the turn of the century when they were beating better teams in the Six Nations. So, no, look, Wales are going to win this and win. It's going to be a celebratory day for Wyn Jones and Bigger, and they deserve that. But what I want to see from Italy is just a little bit of progress. If they can defend well and put together some attack like they did at home, they definitely played better than they did against England, and they definitely played better than they did against France. So while it's not going to be enough for the millennium, I'm hopeful that if they keep developing like that next year they might be closer to getting what the competition needs, which is them winning a game here and there.
Yeah, it does need a win, exactly as you say, Matt. Right, lads, the last time, Quinny, will go to you. The results on Saturday, your predictions, please.
Always come to me first, Stuart, so Matt can have a little giggle.
I can have a think.
Wales, Ireland, and England.
Alan Quinlan.
Well, I've gone against France twice, and maybe the third. I might get third time lucky. I think France will win it, but for sure, I just think France. It's going to be Wales, Ireland, and France.
Matt, can they win it?
Yeah, I'm Alan and I are a link there. Wales, Ireland, and France, and some substantial points in all three games, I suspect.
Well, lads, it's been a pleasure. And don't forget, you can tune in tomorrow, 4:00, Ireland v Scotland on Virgin Media 1. Thanks for joining us over the series, lads, and I'll see you soon.
Pleasure, Stu. See ya.
Stuart.